Hello and welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 35. Today, we're kicking off our first DIY report where we talk to public land and small parcel hunters from across the country, giving you the first-hand information of what's happening in your deer woods. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and today we're doing something a little bit different. There was a while ago, I guess this winter, I was talking to a couple buddies that we had on the show here and started kicking around the idea of sharing information during the course of the year that would be specific to, folks who are hunting public lands and who are hunting small parcels. I don't think there's any shortage of information out there for folks who are, writing articles and magazines that are probably a little bit more focused toward hunts that maybe you and I aren't as familiar with whenever it comes to non-pressured or properties that are set up and manicured to provide the best case scenarios for shot opportunities. So that's not the reality that I live in, and I'm sure a lot of you out there, it's not the reality that you live in either. So started thinking about the possibility of bringing on guys who are kind of skilled in the areas of public land and small parcel hunting, and allowing them from different parts of the country, mind you, and allow them to kind of give you firsthand information from what they're seeing with their boots on the ground. And these are guys who are able to get in the timber quite a bit. The hope is really that, during the course of an episode when you're listening, if you're planning to go out and hunt on a Saturday, that if you pick up and you listen to a podcast or you listen to this show during the course of that week, and we have a guest on who's from your region or close to your region, you can probably get a sense if food sources are changing, if the deer have been dispersed or the bucks have dispersed, or they still bachelor'd up for this time of year, which, I think we're seeing some bachelor groups still kind of holding true. Then hopefully, it might change your mind or possibly on a stand location or a property you were going to hunt based on the information we're able to get to you. So it's really about trying to get you real-time information as often as we possibly can to help you kind of pick and choose where, when, and what type of hunt you want to put on whenever you do get those precious moments off to hit the timber. The other thing that's a little bit different about this episode is that it's going to be a lot shorter in nature, so we're really going to try to keep it short and to the point, and just give you the information as forward and as quickly and succinctly as we possibly can. So that's really the goal. But in the spirit of this being the first podcast for the DIY report, I figured we would do a giveaway. So during this episode, we'll give away a Truth from the Stand deer hunting hat. And all you need to do is listen to this episode, of course, like it on Facebook, and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. You do those two things, you will put your name in the drawing to win a Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast hat, and I will reach out to you via social media to get all your contact info to ship it out to you. So without further ado, we won't belabor this up front any longer. We'll get right to the good stuff. And first up, we'll talk to Curtis Zabel of Behind the Bow, representing Wisconsin and public land. All right, our first report is coming from Curtis Zabel from Behind the Bow. You guys have heard Curtis on the show before. Glad to have him back on. How's it going, man?
Pretty good. Just headed back from the woods right now, and got the call from you. So
nice, cool, man. Anything good happening in the woods today?
Tonight we've seen, I think it was 4 does. And we're actually, right now, we're hunting a particular buck. I'm hunting a particular buck, and we're kind of sitting just a bunch of kind of stupid overlooked spots that I wouldn't even want to hunt, but we've been getting pictures of this buck. So, we've been kind of trying to pinpoint where he's bedding, and we can't really get a grasp on it yet. But I think if he stays where he's at right now, judging by the pictures, because you're getting pictures of him at like 4 in the morning. So judging by the pictures, if he stays where he's at and the pressure doesn't hit real hard, I'm thinking we're going to be able to meet up with him sooner or later. But it's definitely one of the biggest whitetails I've ever hunted. So that's kind of keeping me from hunting all my other spots right now that I have scouted out. So far this year, I haven't even hunted like a scouted set, like a bud hunt or anything, because I've been after this guy.
Oh man, if you got a looker that you're after, that you got a little intel on it, you have a chance at. I can't fault you for diving into some uncharted territory. That's for sure.
Right, and it's just like, I don't know, the area he's in, it's like, man, I just need some time to figure him out, and I think we're going to be able to figure him out as long as he stays put. You know what I mean?
Right. So Curtis is coming to us from Wisconsin here. Did you get? I'm assuming you guys got some of the nice, cold front weather that came through this week. Do you think that helped you out at all this weekend? Did you get a little bit of that while you were in the timber?
Well, this weekend we got kind of screwed over because Friday night, definitely the deer were moving a lot earlier. So I mean Friday, I think it rolled in on Thursday night. The cold front did. So actually on Wednesday, but then it got a little cooler on Friday night and Saturday night. But Friday, I mean, the deer were up on their feet, and then Saturday I had to film my stepsister's wedding, so I didn't even go hunting on Saturday. But then today we went out, and we've seen some pretty good early movement today too.
Right, nice. Yeah, I can definitely attest to the cold front helping some deer get up on their feet. I think for PA, I think it timed out to where Saturday, as our opener was on Saturday, that was the better of the days. It was kind of the backside of that cold front where the morning was kind of overcast, and then high pressure pushed out all the front, and we had some nice bluebird skies. But you were mentioning pressure there for a second. If you don't get any pressure on this deer, you feel like you can figure them out. How's the pressure in the timber bend? Because I know you're hunting public land. So have you seen a lot of trucks parked? Have you seen any guys? What's the story there?
Honestly, I haven't seen too much pressure. I mean, you see the guy here and there parked on the side of the road, but it hasn't been, at least where I'm hunting right now, it hasn't been anything too serious. Mm. So even like opening day, I mean, we were kind of, opening weekend, we were kind of just observing parking lots and stuff, because we have had the first 2 weeks of pretty crappy weather, like super hot, and we didn't want to, go right into it. We kind of wanted to figure it out and see what everyone else is doing first and stuff like that. So,
right.
But I mean, we were observing some parking lots, and there was, a couple trucks here and there, but nothing too bad at all.
Now, do you? I mean, I know that you pay attention to this stuff, but are you seeing some decent food in the timber as far as like a good acorn year this year? Have you noticed farmers kind of pulling their crops out around where you're hunting at this point?
Right now, they're really going to start taking off the corn and the beans. I've been seeing a lot of cornfields like half caught already. Mm-hmm. But as far as acorns go, they were really dropping like hard the first week of bow season, and then they kind of died off a little bit these last couple of weeks. But there's been a lot of acorns where I'm hunting this year.
Yeah, I can say the same. It's it seems like, at least where I've been thus far, and from what I've just heard anecdotally from some other guys, it seems like overall it's going to be a pretty good acorn year, which means find the oak trees, I guess, for October for the most part. But are you noticing? If you're seeing bucks, I'm not sure if you've got into groups of bucks yet at this point in the amount of times you've been out in the timber, but if you have, are you noticing, are they still kind of grouped up, or are they starting to split apart, or what's the story there?
I honestly, all we've seen so far this year is does. Besides, on opening night, we saw a little 6-pointer, but right. So I can't really tell you anything much on that.
Right. Yeah, I know. I saw a few that were grouped, and that might have hurt me this past hunt. But I'm hoping that they start to split up. They're a little. Sometimes could be a little. What's that?
On my trail cameras, I've been noticing that they were like the first, like a week before season, I was still getting like 2 bucks and two bucks together at one time on trail camera out of velvet. But then, now every buck that I've gotten on trail camera has been coming in a loner with those.
Interesting. So as far as, I know that you're kind of after this one deer at this point here. Are there any particular strategies, based on what you're seeing with like some of the ag being taken down and that being a good acorn year, and that, at this point, it sounds as though you're not really encountering a lot of pressure at this point, that may change as the season kind of wears on, but anything in the near future here in the next couple weeks that you plan to really kind of employ as far as a tactic or, terrain features that you're going to look to kind of set, or anything that you could, kind of share, get inside of the brain of Curtis Zabel?
Right now, I'm just focused on getting a general direction on this buck. Like, there's multiple areas where he could be bedding just by the pictures that I have. So right now, I think I'm going to be focusing on trying to get a little better direction. And it's weird because I only get them on this one camera, and I have multiple cameras out within 200-300 yards of that camera sometimes, and I never get them on those cameras, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's really confusing me. But definitely, I think he's the one I'm after. I think it's definitely in just some stupid overlooked spot that I mean, just the terrain around is just all, if you look at it on a map, you wouldn't even want to hunt it. It's all little egg fields and stuff. So
right.
I don't know. I mean, he possibly could be bedding in corn. I'm not even sure, but I'm going to definitely try to get a general direction on him. And then in the meantime, while I'm playing around with these cameras, I'm probably just going to go with my gut and try to eliminate bedding areas.
Right, just kind of keep tightening the circle on him until you kind of start to figure out where you might have a better shot at him to dive in.
Right.
Nice. All right, man. Well, hey, dude, I appreciate you hopping on and giving me some insight into what's shaking in Wisconsin. We'll get a hold of you here later in the season and have you back on.
Sounds good, man. Thanks a lot.
All right, folks, we are joined now for this next report coming from Michigan by Jake Elinger of Habitat Solutions and Whitetail Properties. How you doing, my friend? Long time no speak.
Hey, yeah, I'm doing great, Clint. I really am. It is finally first week of October, and this is what we all wait for, right?
That's right, man. We circle it on the calendar, that's for sure, and everything kind of, all the work and preparation that you do is leading up to this. So I wanted to just kind of hit you up with a couple questions, man, and see what's going on in Michigan. I know, of course, the season's open and everyone's kind of cranking and getting ready to go. And I know here in PA, we had a cold front roll through this weekend, and deer were definitely on their feet. So just, what have you heard in your area of Michigan? Did cold front kind of come through and do what we all expected it to do?
Yes, it did. We had a major drop in temperatures of excess of 20 to 25 degrees. Winds switched out of the northwest, followed by some high pressure, and deer were on their feet mornings and evenings, basically throughout the weekend. And our opening wasn't until yesterday, October 1st. But guys that are cruising the roads, including myself, where I'm driving and then just looking out the windows, and I've got some observation towers in my house to look out and to see the doe groups and the bucks coming out and feeding. And then, also my camera pole all told me that the bucks were definitely moving over this weekend. And there's been some good deer were killed yesterday as well. So
yeah, I definitely saw some Instagram and Facebook pictures of some folks that definitely dropped some good looking deer. So they definitely were on their feet. What I think one of the nice things about this time of year, I think it's maybe 6 of one, half dozen the other. I think in some areas you don't get a whole lot of pressure, and I think in some areas when the opener hits, you get a ton of pressure. So what's as far as Michigan goes, what's the take there? Is it the timber getting hammered pretty hard, or is it not so bad yet?
I'd say it's a tough one to answer. Generally, it gets hit pretty hard. A lot of people look forward to the opening weekend, and now it'll kind of drop off a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
They hit it the first couple of days, and there was a youth hunt there a weekend before last. A little bit of pressure there that involved firearms and archery.
Okay.
But the deer are they've got lots of cover and lots of food. Even though we're going through a really nasty drought in this part. And I don't know if your part of PA has that too, but we have not seen 3/4 of an inch of rain since late June.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been fortunate. We had a relatively wet summer until here. Just a little later in the year, it did dry up a little bit. Unfortunately, right about the times I try to put my my fall food plots in is when about the rain time.
As soon as you try and plant a food plot, right?
Yeah, that's about the time the rain shut off. But,
man. Yep.
But speaking of food sources, what are you seeing in Michigan? Is it looking like it's going to be a good acorn year of the crops? The farmers started pulling their crops out yet?
I'll tell you what, it's been a great acorn year. Everywhere I go, there's a lot of acorns on the ground. I think there's a bit of an earlier drop because of the drought. It causes them to dry up a little sooner and hit the ground. Mm-hmm. And, between my habitat business, my real estate business, I'm on new farms every week. Mm-hmm. And I was on one today, and a beautiful farm not too far from here with some nice hills and beautiful river and bedding. And I saw this incredible deer trail. I started following it, and here was a 30 or 40 foot pear tree. Oh, wow. And there wasn't a blade of grass for 30 yards all the way around. The deer were coming to that pear tree, and there were big old pears dropping, and it looked like they had been dropping for the last month. And you talk about a food source. I looked at that, and I thought, man, if I owned this, I'd get right up here on this hillside, just wait the evening,
Right, yeah.
And so soft mast, pears, apples, we have a native plum, wild plum that's pretty prevalent in this part of southern Michigan. And then, of course, the acorns are all hitting really hard. And then with conjunction, the dry is the farmers are getting out there, and they're taking the beans and the corn down right now. I saw corn pickers moving and guys out picking beans today while I was out driving around.
Right, so it sounds like fruit trees and white oaks seem to would be a good place for stand locations right now. Yep.
And for a lot of those guys out there that key in on your large food sources that the farmers are currently taking down, this signals a big shift taking place. Where are all the deer? Well, correct, they're going to be in the oak flats and any of the little orchards where you've got some fruit trees too.
Right.
So yeah, nice. It's always, important to stay on top of how the deer move because they shift from one food source to another. What was hot last weekend may not even be relevant next weekend.
Right. Yeah. You definitely have to kind of stay on top of monitoring what's going on. Well, speaking of that shift, there's another shift that's kind of getting ready to start or getting, coming up on us here, is that shift where the where the bucks completely disperse, into their ranges as they get closer to pre-rut and rut, of course. And I'm just curious, are you noticing are bucks still kind of grouped up, or are they starting to really kind of disperse and become their solitary creatures that they tend to be once you hit later October, November?
On my own farms and a couple other farms that I'm walking and working on in the last couple of weeks and running cameras on, I'm noticing that from about 2.5 and older, they're all becoming solitary animals now. It seems like I still see the 1.5, one or two together, and physically seeing them out there, and then on my game camera. But I've got a couple of 3s and one I know for sure 4.5, and these guys have become absolutely solitary creatures. They're not in bachelor groups anymore, all by themselves, basically slowly heading into that pre-rut right now.
Right, yeah, so the old men are getting cranky and wanting to be left alone at this point.
Yes, I believe they are.
Right. So, hey, any strategies for this time of year or tactics that, that work well for this particular time of year that you usually kind of like to rely on or that you would suggest for what you're seeing?
Well, I definitely prefer a transition area between food sources and bedding, and especially if there's oaks and things like that spread out through that transition, then that just becomes a really good movement. A movement pattern or just a movement sequence that the deer do either in the mornings and in the evenings. And then of course I really focus on these, especially in October, these cold fronts that come in. They're absolutely magical under the right conditions, and so for my own self, I've got a lot of food that even though you've heard me talk about the bad drought, I still have great food sources here for the deer. So there's a lot of deer in my food sources that make access to some of these transition zones about impossible in the morning. So I pretty much skip morning hunts this time of the year. But if the wind's correct and I can get into an evening hunt from now on, any transition zone between bedding and food is a great strategy.
Nice. Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, hey, I appreciate your time. We got an update from Michigan, and I guess that's to be on the lookout for some more of those awesome cold fronts and with the backside bluebird high pressure days, which you can't beat those in the tree stand. That's for sure.
No, you can't. Okay.
All right, buddy. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. Talking to you, Clint. Bye-bye.
All right, now with us reporting from New Jersey is my good buddy Greg Litzinger. Many of you may know him as Bow Hunting Fiend, coming us from the Garden State. How's it going, man?
Good. Itching to get back out there.
That's right, man. I know we were just talking before we jumped on here, but it sounded like you had some good cold front movement this weekend. How'd the cold front treat you?
I went out first. My first sit was pretty much Friday. With the whole Montana trip and then doing stuff around the house. So it was so hot when I came home, I didn't bother going out. So I left work early Friday, and deer were out, 2:15. They were in places they shouldn't be at 2:15 in the afternoon. And same with, Saturday and Sunday. Super early movement, late morning movement. It was a very productive weekend.
Nice. Yeah, and I know you had some success. Did you actually get out in the morning, or did you just do evening hunts this early?
I did mornings. I didn't do Sunday morning. I just the wind was it was shifting Saturday night, so I wasn't even going to bother driving an hour to go sit in the spot with a shifty wind.
Right.
So I slept in, did some family time Sunday, and was Sunday morning, and was back out Sunday night.
Nice. And you said you even had decent movement there in the mornings too.
Yeah. Well, it was Saturday morning when I went out. They didn't nowhere near me, but there was definitely movement in the woods. I could hear them breaking sticks and catching a little glimpse of tail flickering. But it's so thick, it's just hard. And if they're not within 30 yards, it might as well be a mile away.
Right.
But they were moving pretty much till mid morning. 9:30, I think I got down, 9:45, and those still deer, milling around.
Nice. So what about? I mean, I know and talking to you, not just on a podcast, but you and I talking separately. I know a lot of the places you hunt are getting are high pressure or heavy pressure areas. So what's the pressure looking like at this point of the season? Are you seeing a lot of guys and gals out in the woods, or has it not quite been ratcheted up yet and the deer still kind of calm?
Yeah, Friday at one spot, I call it, it's almost, I've never not seen a deer there or kicked them up or something. And there was some boot tracks there, which is odd because I've never seen boot tracks back in there. And then Saturday evening, I hunt down, set up along the salt marsh, and they tend to run rabbit dogs from time to time. And they are running those dogs. I mean, they ran those dogs from, I got there at 3. I was walking up the woods at 3. They were running dogs from 3 on the piece way down the road, and they just worked up pretty much to where I was till a half hour before dark. They were still running dogs. So that definitely puts, 2 spots that I thought I would have some success at this year, but pretty much off my radar if they're running that hard right now. So, which kind of stinks, but they just push deer further down, so maybe it's a blessing in disguise, Who knows? But I ran across one bait pile, an old one and just one fresh one, which is a rarity because normally they're all over the place. So that's a plus side of the one piece I hunted on Sunday.
Right.
So that's always encouraging.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's the least or the less sign you see at this point is always is a good sign, I guess, in our book. What about the food sources, man, where you're hunting at? I mean, are you noticing are the crops in the nearby ag fields getting pulled, and are you noticing is it going to be a good acorn year? What do you see in the timber for food?
Most of our crops down by where I was hunting, they're already cutting. Most of the beans have been cut. They're brown or getting ready to be cut. And some of the cornfields are already cutting them, which is good. But the bad part is every acorn, every oak tree is dropping. No matter if it's swamp oak, it's swamp chestnuts, swamp white oaks, there's oaks, it's just everywhere. It's just a bumper crop, but which also makes hunting a lot more difficult because now just like it's like a giant cornfield. food's everywhere. Deer don't really need to move very far, which if you find the right tree, it's great, but
Right.
the key is to find that right group of trees.
Right. Yeah. Cause at that point it's, they've kind of got their pick, I guess, so to speak, and makes it really tough. I mean, I would anticipate that we're probably going to have a pretty lull-filled October lull with that much food on the ground in the timber. But speaking of deer and trying to find them, are you seeing, at least in New Jersey, are you seeing our bucks still grouped up, or are they starting to disperse and transition into their areas that they usually like to live in during the pre-rut and rut, or are they still kind of running the gang, or the boys still back in town, so to speak?
I said I've yet to see horns, so I can't answer that. But what I've seen rub wise, there's a lot of rubs, but a lot of big rubs are non-existent at this present moment. Mm-hmm. But one thing I did notice is a lot of scrapes, not only like perimeter field edge scrapes, but I've seen quite a few scrapes in the woods Saturday night and Sunday night, which is a rarity because normally I don't see that type of activity, until closer to October when they're starting to scrape up the food sources. So I don't know what to make of that. I've never seen them that early scraping in the big woodlot. So I'll see how that plays out here, this later this week and this weekend, I guess.
Yeah, I'll have to definitely keep me posted on that. Interesting that I did see, I think it was 2 scrapes on my walk in this weekend, and I thought it was a little early too. But yeah, it's curious to see to see those this early. I'm wondering if maybe the abundance of food in the timber and holding them there more or I guess longer is having anything to do with that. I can't imagine that the cold front would kick them into high gear this early, but you never know, I guess.
I guess. Yes, well, I think might be just an influx of a lot of year and a half old deer that might have made it. Some little preteen deers running around, getting some creative juices flowing,
getting salty, trying to start something.
Yeah.
So, last question here, man. Any strategies for this time of year or tactics that you'd like to use that you feel work, particularly well for this part of the season?
Food to bed. If you can find where they're eating, like a tree or like a persimmon tree or like a cluster of persimmons, and if there's a bed close by, I mean, I wouldn't say that's money, but for me, I've had, quite a bit of success in the month of October hunting, bed to food. If I find the right food, where they're hitting it up, and I know there's a bed, within, 100 yards, I wouldn't call it a slam dunk, but there is usually a sighting that's going to happen, this week or next week. Because normally this is my time when I see, I'll catch a glimpse of a good buck. So I should hopefully see something this coming week and maybe make a move on it, before they start, making their rounds.
Yeah, before they get harder to tackle, man. Well, thanks for giving me the update from Jersey, my man. I'll be in touch soon. We got to get together.
Yes, most definitely.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. The number one or the first DIY report in the books. Just want to thank all of you for tuning in, and be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook to keep up with all of our outdoor and whitetail excursions during the course of the season. I want to make sure to wish all of you the best of luck as you hit the deer woods during the different times of the season this year. Before we shut this thing down, I want to say a big thanks to our partners for helping keep this podcast going. So a big thank you to Whitetail Institute of North America, Exodus Outdoor Gear, and Lone Wolf Portable Tree Stands. And until next time, we'll see y'all.
November's on my heels, makes me proud, makes me steal. I could show you through the door, I ain't welcome anymore. A long time coming, if it all, it takes a special knowing to colorful image heads, broken letters, rationalize yourself. with numbers, but I gotta get away from here. Gotta get away from here. Oh,